You know the name. You've seen the movies. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll. The hip-swiveling heartthrob icon who made teenage girls scream and their parents clutch their pearls. But what if I told you that everything, the sold-out Vegas shows, the gold records stacked to the ceiling, the mansion called Graceland, all of it came down to one moment. A desperate mother, a dusty hardware store in Mississippi, and $7.90. This isn't a story about fame. This is a story about a decision, a sacrifice, a gift that would echo through music history and define an entire generation. This is the story of how a dirt-poor kid who couldn't even afford a birthday bicycle ended up becoming the most iconic voice in American music. And it all started with that guitar. Let's go back. Way back. January 8th, 1935. Tupelo, Mississippi. Elvis Aaron Presley came into this world in what they called a shotgun shack. And if you don't know what that is, picture this. A house so small and narrow you could stand at the front door and see straight through to the back. 2 rooms total. No bathroom. No running water. Walls patched with cardboard and newspaper to keep the winter wind out. This wasn't just humble. This was poverty. Real, grinding, soul-crushing poverty. His father, Vernon Presley, was a good man but a struggling one. He bounced from job to job. Laborer, truck driver, whatever he could find, but the money never lasted. Sometimes there was food on the table, sometimes there wasn't. The Presleys lived on the edge, one bad week away from losing everything. But in that tiny house, there was something money couldn't buy: love. Specifically, the fierce, unshakable love of Gladys Presley. Elvis was a mama's boy from day one, and he never apologized for it. Gladys doted on him, protected him, saw the world in him. See, Elvis had a twin brother, Jesse Garin, who was stillborn. Gladys never got over that loss. Elvis wasn't just her son. He was her miracle, her survivor, the boy who made it when his brother didn't. She poured everything into him, every hope, every dream, every ounce of belief she had. And in that cramped shotgun shack, Gladys looked at her gentle, soft-spoken boy and saw something nobody else could see yet: potential. Greatness, a light that just needed the right match to ignite it. Flash forward to January 1946. Elvis Aaron Presley is about to turn 11 years old. Now, if you were an 11-year-old boy in 1940s Mississippi, you wanted one of two things: a bicycle or a rifle. Every kid on the block had one or the other. The bicycle meant freedom. You could ride into town, race your friends, feel the wind in your hair. The rifle meant you were becoming a man, helping put food on the table, earning respect. Elvis wanted that bicycle bad. He dreamed about it. A shiny new bike with chrome handlebars and maybe even a bell. He could picture himself riding it down the dirt roads of Tupelo, finally fitting in with the other boys who didn't live in a shotgun shack. Or maybe the rifle. He could go hunting with his daddy, be useful, be grown. So when his birthday rolled around, he asked, not once, but over and over, the way only an 11-year-old can ask, with that mix of hope and desperation that breaks a parent's heart. And Gladys had to say no. Can you imagine that moment? Looking into your child's eyes and telling them you can't afford the one thing they want more than anything in the world. Not because you don't want to give it to them, not because they don't deserve it, but because $7 or $8 or $10 might as well be $1,000 when you're counting pennies for bread. A bicycle was out of the question, too expensive. A rifle? Gladys wouldn't hear of it. Her boy was gentle, artistic, sensitive. A rifle wasn't for him. But here's where the story gets interesting, because Gladys Presley didn't just say no and leave it at that. She'd been thinking, planning. She'd seen something at the Tupelo hardware store a few weeks back, and she'd been saving every spare nickel and dime she could hide from the bills and the rent and the never-ending expenses. She told Elvis she had a surprise for him, something better than a toy, something that would last. Elvis, being 11, was skeptical. Adults always said stuff like that when they couldn't afford what you really wanted. Gladys took her son by the hand and walked him down to the Tupelo hardware store. Now, this wasn't a music shop. This was a hardware store, the kind of place that sold hammers and nails and chicken wire. But back then, small-town hardware stores sold a little bit of everything, including a few cheap instruments gathering dust on a back wall. And there it was, hanging between a mandolin and some garden tools, a plain, unremarkable acoustic guitar. The price tag read $7.90. Let me put that in perspective for you. $7.90 in 1946 had the buying power of about $130 today. For the Presley family, that wasn't just money, that was a week's worth of groceries. That was the electric bill. That was a choice between this guitar and keeping the lights on. But Gladys counted out those crumpled dollar bills and the pile of nickels and dimes she'd been hoarding. The store clerk wrapped it up and she placed it in her son's hands. Elvis was confused, disappointed even. This wasn't what he wanted. This wasn't a bicycle with gleaming chrome. This wasn't a rifle that would make him look tough. This was just a guitar, a cheap one, the kind of thing that seemed like a consolation prize. But then Gladys knelt down, looked her boy in the eyes, and said something that would change everything. "Now you have everything you need, baby." In that moment, something shifted. Elvis saw the sacrifice in his mother's face. He saw the belief in her eyes. She hadn't just bought him a guitar, she'd invested in him. She'd chosen his future over their present needs. And suddenly, that cheap wooden instrument wasn't just a guitar anymore. It was a promise, a challenge, a destiny waiting to be claimed. Elvis made a decision right there. He would not let his mama down. That guitar became Elvis's entire world. He didn't have money for lessons, couldn't afford a teacher even if Tupelo had one, so he taught himself, the way countless blues and country musicians had done for generations. He learned by listening, by watching, by playing until his fingers developed calluses and his wrists ached. Every Sunday, Gladys dragged him to the First Assembly of God church. While other boys squirmed in the pews, Elvis absorbed the gospel music like a sponge. He watched the way the congregation swayed and clapped. He felt the emotion in those spirituals, the joy, the pain, the transcendence. He learned that music wasn't just about notes on a page. It was about feeling, about moving people's souls. During the week, he'd sneak down to the black neighborhoods of Tupelo, sitting outside jute joints and churches listening to the blues. This was the Jim Crow South, remember? A white boy had no business being there. But Elvis didn't care about the color lines that adults obsessed over. He just heard the music, that raw, honest, pain-soaked blues that told stories his own family was living. Struggle, heartbreak, hope against impossible odds. And at night, he'd twist the dial on the family's beat-up radio, picking up country stations from Nashville, blues from Memphis, gospel from anywhere he could find it. He'd sit in that shotgun shack, guitar in his lap, trying to recreate the sounds he heard, blending them together in ways that hadn't quite been done before. The other kids thought he was weird. Elvis was shy, a loner, the poor kid with the strange clothes his mother made from feed sacks. But when he had that guitar in his hands, none of that mattered. The guitar was his voice when he was too timid to speak, his companion when other kids excluded him, his escape from a poverty that felt suffocating and endless. He took it everywhere, to school, to the porch after dinner, on the long walks through Tupelo when the house felt too small and the future felt too uncertain. That $7.90 guitar was more than an instrument. It was his best friend, his therapist, his ticket to somewhere better, even if he didn't know where yet. Years passed. The Presleys finally scraped together enough money to leave Tupelo, moving to Memphis when Elvis was 13. They traded the shotgun shack for a public housing project, but it was a step up. Memphis meant opportunity. Memphis meant Beale Street, where the blues came alive every night. Memphis meant possibility. Elvis kept playing, kept learning, kept blending those sounds, gospel, country, blues, rhythm, into something that was uniquely his. He didn't have a name for it yet. Nobody did, but he could feel it forming, this new sound that made his heart race and his fingers fly across those guitar strings. In 1953, 18-year-old Elvis walked into Sun Records. He paid $4 to record a song for his mother's birthday. The receptionist, Marion Keisker, heard something in his voice. She made a note. Good ballad singer, hold. A year later, Sam Phillips, the founder of Sun Records, and a man desperately searching for a white singer who could deliver black music with authentic feeling, called Elvis back. He paired him with two local musicians, Scotty Moore and Bill Black. They jammed for hours, trying to find something, anything that clicked. And then it happened. During a break, Elvis started goofing around, playing a sped-up, loose version of an old blues song called That's All Right. Scotty and Bill jumped in. The sound was raw, energetic, completely different from anything on the radio. Sam Phillips hit record and said the words that would change music history. "That's it. That's the sound I've been looking for. That $7.90 guitar had just launched a revolution." What happened next, you probably know. The rise was meteoric. That's All Right started getting airplay in Memphis, then across the South, then everywhere. Elvis appeared on television and caused a moral panic. His hip movements were so vulgar that Ed Sullivan famously ordered cameramen to only shoot him from the waist up. Teenage girls screamed themselves hoarse. Parents worried about the corruption of American youth. Religious leaders called him the devil's music made flesh. But the kids understood. This wasn't just music. This was freedom. This was rebellion. This was a working-class kid from nowhere showing them that the American dream was still possible, even if you started with nothing. Heartbreak Hotel, Hound Dog, Don't Be Cruel, Jailhouse Rock, Love Me Tender. The hits kept coming, each one bigger than the last. Elvis made movies, served in the army, performed for presidents, sold out Vegas for years. The boy who couldn't afford a bicycle became the biggest star the world had ever seen. Worth millions, living in a mansion with gates and guards and everything he dreamed of as a kid. But here's what matters. He never forgot. Never forgot where he came from. Never forgot the shotgun shack. And most importantly, never forgot the woman who gave him that guitar. When Gladys died in 1958, Elvis was inconsolable. He threw himself on her coffin, sobbing, saying he'd give every dollar, every record, every piece of fame back if he could just have her again. She was buried at Graceland, and Elvis visited her grave almost daily for the rest of his life. That mama's boy never stopped being a mama's boy, even when she was gone. So here's the truth that nobody talks about enough. Elvis Presley's story isn't really about talent, though he had that in abundance. It's not about luck, though that played a part. It's about a moment, a choice. A mother who saw her son's potential and sacrificed to give him a chance. $7.90. That's what it cost to change music history. That's what it cost to create the king of rock and roll. That's what it costs to prove that poverty doesn't have to be destiny, that dreams don't require wealth, that sometimes all it takes is one person who believes in you enough to make a sacrifice. Before the jumpsuits and the gold records, before Graceland and the movies and the legend, there was a boy and a guitar and a mother's love. That's where the story really begins. That's what we should remember. The next time you hear an Elvis song, think about that. Think about Gladys Presley counting out her coins in a hardware store. Think about a disappointed 11-year-old who didn't get his bicycle but got something infinitely more valuable. Think about how one gift, given with love and faith and hope, can echo through generations. That's the power of believing in someone. That's the power of a mother's love. That's how a $7.90 guitar became priceless. Now tell me, what's your favorite Elvis song? Drop it in the comments below. And if this story moved you, if you learned something you didn't know, hit that subscribe button, because this is what we do here. We tell the stories behind the legends, the human moments that created the icons. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching. Long live the king.